right, we are now on Retake. It was really good talking to the men on Monday. You know, they gave their own opinion about what they think about the mother and the wife, and they all played safe. So I want to hear from the ladies because I have two couples on this set right now, and I want to hear from the ladies whether these men are as good as they made me think when we were back there on Monday. So we're joined by the ladies. We're talking about the interference or the balance between the wife and the mother. Whose man are you? Whose man is he? Does he belong to the wife? Does he belong to the mother? How do you resolve those conflicts? When there's areas of friction and tension, who carries the day or who should carry the day, if there's anybody who should do that? Keep the conversation going with us, though. On Twitter, KTN Life and Style is the hashtag. Do the same on Facebook and on Instagram. Remember, our social media platforms are at KTN Life_Style. That is for Twitter and Instagram, and KTN Life and Style for Facebook. So I bring in the ladies to join us. I'm going to get them introduce themselves right from my father's right. Welcome to Retake and to Relationship Wednesday.
Thank you. My name is Sifa Wainaina. I'm married. I've been married for 8 years. We have 4 children, and I'm a marriage coach. We run a company called Mr. and Mrs. Inc. with my husband.
All right. Whose man is he? Yours or his mother's?
Definitely mine.
All right. And the gentleman, we had him on set, but please introduce yourself.
My name is Michael Bangwa. I've been married for 4 years. We have one daughter who is 2 years and 2 months.
All right.
She's my wife.
His wife is here with him. Kindly introduce yourself.
My name is Gloria. I've been married to this man for the last 4 years. As he said, he's my man, not the mother's. I'm an accountant by profession.
So you hold him to account?
Most definitely. And I also work with the role model of United Nations. Yeah.
All right. And then to my immediate left.
Okay. My name is Benson. I'm a marriage counselor. I've been married for going into 13 years of marriage. And the question is whether I belong to my mom or my wife's. I belong to my wife.
All right. And then we have a couple. Yeah.
I'm Cynthia Waboyotieno.
Okay.
I'm married to this man, amazing man. We've been married 8 years now. We have 2 children. I'm a relationship and marriage coach running an organization called Amid Network.
All right. And Don.
Yeah, hi, I'm Don Atemo. Married to her.
Okay.
And yes, she's fast.
Ladies, tell me, just tell me, what is men speaking the truth? Let me start with you, Cynthia. What is men speaking the truth? Because they were playing it so safe over there. They were like, you know, my wife comes fast, and then my mother. What are they speaking the truth?
I really was very impressed. It's so impressive because the thing is that that's the gospel truth, is that at the point where the woman, the man makes the choice and chooses her, that means there's been, like what BX was talking about, is that there's a change of role. So that means she comes first.
All right.
And it's not like this, it's not an equality thing. It's not like this one weighs 5, this one weighs 4. It's a change or a change of roles.
But is it that clear? Is it that clear? It is clear to you, probably. Is it that clear to everybody else? Is it that clear to, for example, would it be that clear to my mother? Because if letting go of a child to school is so difficult, letting go of a child to a boarding school is so difficult, releasing a child even over the wedding is so difficult because the emotional attachment, is it that clear that now, you know, there's a boundary I can't be coming in?
Let me tell you, Pastor Chris, if you had asked me this question 8 years ago, I would possibly have been very militant and given you a very, you know, very woman's lib kind of answer. You know, now I'm a mother. I have a 5-year-old daughter. Let me tell you, this daughter, I can't even imagine walking her down the aisle because I feel I own her.
Right.
Okay, so I can understand as a mother having that great responsibility and even feeling that for 30-something years, this girl was in my house. Okay, or this man has come and taken this child, isn't it? That is the tension that will always be there. Right. But the beauty and the big thing here is defining that for mom. Helping the atmosphere around this relationship be properly defined. And I think that will happen consistently throughout the marriage. It's not like it will be at the very beginning you're going to say that, you know what, Mom, this is what it's going to be. This is what I have decided. No, 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 no. Maybe what you need to do is sit down and define the first couple of, you know, you come out, you know, the way
What do you do when you've got this mother-in-law who has a very strong personality? And she's very driven about what she wants to do, so no matter what you say, you know, sometimes they say, you know, you're children, you don't know what you're talking about. What do you do in such a case, Sifa?
I think the best thing to do would be to respectfully let her know that there are boundaries in the marriage, and also to help her understand that she needs to let her son build his own home. And probably maybe the best thing to do would be to get a neutral person. So for example, maybe you can get maybe her sister or a relative that you know she would respect, but who can be able to gently communicate to her that she needs to respect the boundary, and then to understand that her son is building a home. Because I think the reason why sometimes mother-in-laws can be so forceful is that, you know, maybe they're scared that their sons will not be treated well, or you want things to go perfect. But fact number one, life will never be perfect. So the thing is, this woman is not going to treat your wife, I mean, is not going to treat your son perfectly, but you need to let them learn instead of being the one to come and impose on it. But number two, she needs to remember when she got married, she was building her own home with her husband. So now, for her now to have, you know, gotten to this place where she's now imposing on her son's marriage, it's really unfair. So I think it's good to get a neutral person and just explain to her that she needs to keep the boundaries.
But what are those decisions? Because I tried to ask the men and they were not telling me. I still need them to tell me that. What are those decisions that you would say now, Mom is crossing the line? What are those kind of decisions? Over what? If she said, for example, okay, because everybody went quiet, so I'll push it even further. if you want to do your own thing, you know, you said, Sifa, that you're building, the son is building his family and is building his own. And then the mother is feeling like, these kids have been married, like you've been married 13 years. These kids, they should be owning their house right now. You just bought your second car because you're thinking you need to go to work and your hubby needs to be going to work. She's looking at those two cars. She's thinking, why don't you have a house on this other side? So she begins to put pressure. I need you to buy land over here, or I need you to do this. I need you to build. But you think that the two cars are helping you go to work. Is she crossing the line? And she keeps on insisting.
My take on this is, in every relationship, there's always going to exist differences in opinions. And in the case of a mother and a daughter-in-law kind of a relationship, there has to be respect when it comes to accepting that not everyone will have the same line of thought as yours. So in as much as there are going to be boundaries in the relationship, I think there also needs to be a diplomatic way of being able to resolve conflicts when they arise. And once you're able to get that balance, then I think there won't be this much issues.
So talk to me about the diplomatic ways. What are those ways that you would resolve conflict between a wife and a mother? Benson.
Yeah. My thought is that in every what you call conflict, the wife and the husband should always be on the same page. Don't have that exchange between the two of you in the eyes or in front of your folks, because you have lost that battle. So she will play, she will walk right into it, especially if she's a manipulative kind. She will ride on it and divide you, and she will get her way. Your disagreements, whether we should sell the car or not, whether we should buy the piece of land or not, need to happen away from them. And when I address my mom, I should address her. I should address her in support of our home, and say, this is what we have agreed. This is what we are going to do moving forward.
All right. But we're talking, and we've concentrated a bit on the mother-in-law, but sometimes people have gotten married, and then you were in there, then this wife that you married, has turned out to be something completely different from what you were prepared for. And now you're trying to seek help. Is it okay to bring your mother into it and trying to understand how do you run this marriage?
Most people say that makes you a mama's boy.
Is it really being a mama's boy? You know, you and Gloria, you know, you got married and then somewhere along the line, things have changed. She's either emotionally abusive or manipulative, controlling, you know, very hostile and things like that. And the only person that you feel you could safely talk to is your mother. Is that all right to do? Sifa is not very sure that.
You know, I'm just thinking that's a very sensitive situation, and I think it's extremely unwise to speak to your mother-in-law because, I mean, for the guy to speak to his mother because, of course, the mother is going to get emotional. She will have vested interests. I mean, I'm a mother and I have one son. If he was married and then he comes and tells me that, you know, the wife is doing something that's making him unhappy, I think, you know, I would just go crazy. Of course, I would be very unhappy with a woman.
Bias.
So I think it's always wise to find someone neutral to speak to when you find yourself in such a situation. And I think these are some of the things that are very important in premarital counseling, but also as counseling in marriage, that understand that one of the things about conflict resolution, it's important to find someone neutral to resolve your issues. Because if I had a problem with my husband and I speak to my mother, of course she's going to side with me, you know. So I don't think it would be very wise to speak to the mother-in-law.
All right. Before we took a break from mandate, I raised the issue of hair versus the mother. And I want to hear your opinion because I asked this man, you know, if your wife wants to do her hair and you don't really have cash, but she wants to do her hair, and that's the same time that your mother is asking for money, she probably promised to give some money to the church, the deadline is coming, she's got a reputation to keep. And the men, you know, they didn't really give me a good answer, apart from Benson, who was telling me that he'd look at the priorities. Cynthia, what do you think men usually do in such cases? I'm not even talking about you and Dawn.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't want you to fight after this.
Hair is a priority. It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sifa. It's a priority. As in, you know, okay, let's be real about this. Let's be very real. When it comes to money, it doesn't matter if you have resources or not. When it comes to planning, I like what he said, is that when you plan, are you actually being able to give to your family or give it to your mother or give to the other side? So that then, is this part of the giving or is this extra? Okay? And I think this is a conversation that needs to have taken place where you look through what your resources look like and see, can we actually be able to spare that extra chama money, because whatever it is, the church money, that it's going to be part of the offerings or givings. We need to discuss that. It cannot be that every weekend we have a chama or whatever it is at the expense of what the family needs look like, including my hair.
But what if, I like that. What if it is those kind of emergency situations, Mike, you know, you've got like, if there is a sick mother, there's a sick mother, there's little resources. How far should the wife be stretched in such a case over a son who wants to be responsible over the sick mother, and yet here is a wife who wants to be taken care of?
You know, the Swahilians, they say, damu mzito kuliko maji. And something like that played out in my marriage at some point when there was an emergency, and this had nothing to do with my folks, it was my siblings. Right. So they were in this high school in the village, and it was important for somebody to go and visit. And so I committed that I will go and visit. Then it happens that just before the weekend of the visit, my wife started feeling unwell. Now, so I was caught in between. Do I fulfill? I have to be a man of my word. I told everyone I will go.
You would go.
Yes, right. And here is my wife. She is not very bad. She's not dying.
Yeah. But she's unwell.
But she's unwell. So what did BX do? BX took the next bus and went to visit the siblings. And so when I came back home, we were having a conversation. Then in the middle of that conversation, my wife says, you know, I realized that maji ni mzito kuliko maji. And it hit me, at that point it hit me that actually what I was doing, I'd rather keep my word to my siblings, you know, be known out there as someone who keeps his word. And here I am, I have
neglected
neglected my wife.
But I want to pick up on what you have just said. You know, the Swahili saying of damu ni nzito kuliko maji. I want to pick up that in the marriage context. Is it that marriage is not that strong a bond that you would say, you know, if I were to bring it literally into translation, is it that my biological family that I came from is blood and my wife is not blood? Would that be how people would perceive that?
That's how people perceive it, but if we go by scripture, because I will base this argument on scripture, you know, your wife is bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh, and it doesn't get closer than that. It doesn't appear as that, but that is the expectation.
Okay. Yeah. Don, you wanted to say something?
Yes. In the family setting, you appear, you are born into it, but your wife, you actually make a covenant before God and man that you're going to, for good, for better, for worse, you actually make a covenant before God about your wife. In your family, you are born into it. So I would still put my wife first, although depending on the situation, like you're saying, you talk about it, agree, but still.
All right, ladies. Okay, go ahead, Cynthia.
I wanted to add something into that because, yes, blood is thicker in the sense that when your brother, the blood calls unto blood. There's that connection because, as Don is saying, you were born into, you didn't make any choices to be part of this family. You found it. But there's such a bond that comes with blood relatives. There's a bond. And then there's a choice that you have made to marry this person. So now, I believe that's a tension that God has created for us to be able to consistently choose this person, even if sometimes the blood does not call unto it. And so that's why there has to be a spiritual connection, a build-up of intimacy that you have to intentionally choose this person, even when the blood is actually pulling you
Don't
apart.
you think then that usually makes people find it easier to stick with the blood because, you know, this is a choice. And sometimes you can change the choices that you made. Somebody can just decide, well, I made a bad choice. So when they already feel that there's an option right over there, they're going to give priority to what they think is a bit more permanent. Don't you think that that opens the door?
Yeah.
In regard to the conversation we're having about being a mama's boy, we also need to understand that it's not just the husband who is having to deal with you and the mom. The husband also has a mother-in-law from your mom, in as much as you have a mother-in-law from his mom.
And I was going to come to that.
Exactly. So in this regard, I think that you're supposed to have a balance in your priorities. You need to know that you have made a choice, as Don is saying. You have made a choice and you need to stick by it.
What happens, I was going to come to that, because what happens in cases where the man's mother and the woman's mother do not really agree in how their children should go about things, and they're both very vocal and they're both very assertive about how they want things to run over there. Don't you think that that pressure somewhere along the line, something is going to give?
There has to be a way that conflicts can be manageable. And when this,
you see, you're all sitting over here. Most of you are marriage and relationship experts. And so you're talking very well.
I'm not a relationship expert.
I said most of you.
Can I give you a practical example? In my own family, my mom she's late now, was a very strong woman. Strong in the sense that she's a choleric, she's driven, she's aggressive, and maybe that's where I get my drive from. And when I got married, my mom had ideals of a marriage. And she was very quick to share them with me and tell me, this is how you're going to do money. A wise woman has a secret stash. Okay, she had her own ideals. This is what I expect from you, which was not my ideals. This is not what we were trying to build. And so what we had to do as a family, knowing my mother, understanding that these are her fears, these are the things that are holding her back, and also respecting that because she comes from a different generation. And vice versa, my mother-in-law, being an older woman, being that she has her own ideals, what we had to do is always, like what Pastor BX said, is that be on the same page.
All right.
Before we actually went into, we had to define what money looks like, what happens when mom calls. We actually had, you know, it sounds so tedious and mundane, but we also said, when mom calls, when it comes to money, what do we say? Who is the one who's going to address that issue? Because we have to speak as one, and we actually would have a drill. The other side as well. And so we actually were able to deal with conflict easier because we would speak as one. Even when at the time, I may not emotionally remember the blood is calling unto blood, and I would feel, oh my goodness, my mom is in trouble. But we had agreed from the very beginning.
You have to remember.
I have to remember we are in agreement.
Okay, I want to throw at you a question, that a very interesting one. For the ladies, would you accept that your husband goes and lives close to you, his mother? You know, moves into the neighborhood. So he's not living with his mother, but in the neighborhood. Would you accept that? Is that safe? Is that good?
For me, it's something that I'm still thinking about currently, because you see in our African society, you find the men are given an inheritance from where the parents are coming from.
Okay, let's talk about Nairobi. Let's talk about Nairobi. So here is a man, grew up in South B. The mother still lives in South B. He gets a job, he can afford a house anywhere else. Then he finds his way and says, you know what, let's go and live in Golden Gate. Is that safe? Is that good? Is that... So every weekend, you know, you've got to pass by Mama's house. Sifa.
Oh my God. Funny enough, I grew up in South B. I think that is extremely unwise, because the truth of the matter is, the closer you are to your parents, the easier it is to, for one, maybe run to them in case of a situation. And sometimes you can have conflict. And the wise thing in that situation would be to find a way of resolving the conflict yourself. But it would be very easy at that point then to, you know, to run to the mother-in-law. And the other thing also would be that it's also natural for her to visit every now and then. And the truth of the matter is, you know, we all love our parents, but here we are, we're married, we're trying to build our own relationship, and having the presence of the parents a bit too much can now get to a place where it's destroying the relationship.
How far should I go? How far should I go?
I think also you should look at probably your children again. Just the advantage of your children having a grandma who they can recollect with for a short while. As you know, our parents mostly are elderly. And from that point, also try to, because you also, as long as your relationship is important with your mother-in-law, your children's relationship is important with their grandmother and grandfather.
So you advocate for community?
I advocate for community for some time.
Okay.
For some time. Right. Like me, I had to move from where I live to be next to my, not really close, but
not
distance,
too far.
Not too far.
Okay, I'm going to take the closing thoughts, and I'm going to begin with Sifa. Please wrap up with your final thoughts.
I think one of the things that we need to remember, and Cynthia has mentioned it, number one, as a couple, you need to remember that you need to be one. So the oneness and the unity is very important. Even in the case where there is conflict, you just need to have that, be on the same page. And then I think number two is just defining the boundaries and letting your parents, in a respectful way, understand that you're building your own home. And I think it's important for them to let you do it in your own way. Whether you're going to make mistakes, you'll fall and get up, just give you a chance to learn.
All right, Michael.
Yes, I think setting boundaries is the key, especially for intrusiveness, but discreetly. Discreetly, but also I think as a couple, you need to sit down and hint to your mother as a man and her to her mother or her father to hint to them, to explain their expectations, and then list down probably the conflicts and reasonable and workable solutions, whereby you can be able to start from.
All right, Gloria.
Well, in a marriage context, I believe a mama's boy is someone who is constantly dependent on the mother more than they are on the wife. And I believe when a mother will raise up a man to become a good husband to their wife, but that might not be possible if the mother keeps clinging to the son after releasing him to go and start his own life.
So she needs to let go.
Yes, so I believe that a mother-in-law needs to let go of the son to be dependent.
All right, Benson.
The issue of disagreements between spouses and their in-laws, it's a long-term it's a long-term process, and therefore it is something that has to be dealt with over time.
Continually and consistently.
Exactly.
All right, Cynthia.
At the center of this conversation is the ability to build an amazing communication system that builds the security in the families. The wife feels secure and the mother feels secure. So the communication around that is what is going to center each one of them.
All right. As you wind up, Don, you tell me whose responsibility is that to create that system?
I think as we all know, the man leads the family. Yeah. So I think it starts way behind. Well, this man is still home with mom. I think that's where things get messed up. Well, by the time you're getting to be a mama's boy, there were things that were missing right from when you were home. So I think the man should go out and fix cars with his dad and be the man that he's called to be, then lead a woman as a wife when the time comes.
Well, there you had it. You've got to set boundaries, you've got to have communication systems, but we want to hear what you are saying. So keep the conversation going on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Remember, the hashtag is KTN Life and Style. We want to know, what do you do when there is this conflict of the mother of the man and the wife to the man? Whose man is he? I want to hear from the men. Whose man are you? Who carries the day? If there is this need that your mother has and then your wife has a need too, who should carry the day? How far is too far? Keep the conversation going. Remember to follow us on Twitter at KTN Life_Style. The same for Instagram, KTN Life and Style for Facebook. 22840 is our text message number. And you could write us email on lifeandstyle@standardmedia.co.ke. We take a short break right now and we come back with Style My Wife, Style My Hubby. Keep it right here. Relationship Wednesday, Life and Style.
Actually, like the trouser, it's like belly bottom. He's still young, so hata tukitembea like going out together, sometimes we just feel like shit because we're like, wow, this man.
Have you ever told him that he was shaving you?
No, I've never told you.
But of course, you should tell from your reactions.
Yes.